This week we'll take a brief look at public relations, particularly writing news releases. And so that's in a separate slideshow, but right now I want to talk about the difference between public relations and journalism. Some of you might decide that you want to pursue a career in public relations and later take some more courses about that. But so this is a little introduction to that, and you can use those skills immediately. You'd be surprised at how many organizations that you're in, once they know that you know how to communicate, are going to ask you to do those jobs. So we've spent time the past few weeks talking about writing for journalism, but journalism and public relations are similar and they're also different. So both write stories for the public. A journalist provides an objective account of events or issues and spends time telling other people's stories. But a PR practitioner writes to promote a client in hopes of getting stories published. So often that PR practitioner is going to write a story that goes to the journalist, and then the journalist then decides whether those news values fit his or her organization and the public's best interest. So they work hand in hand in lots of ways. They both need each other. So PR practitioners and journalists, one needs the other. PR practitioners need journalists to be interested in what it is their client needs to have promoted there. So there's a lot of thought that goes into PR writing in a way that attracts the attention of journalists. It garners the respect of the journalist, and it meets the journalist's needs. Journalists need PR people for information and story ideas. So, for example, if I wanted to do a story on something at a nearby hospital, I would probably look on the administration's website of that hospital and find the communications director. That's going to be that PR practitioner who works on behalf of the hospital. That person is going to allow me to find the people I need. Often, those officials at a hospital will not speak unless they have they've met with the PR practitioner and they understand what the need is for the journalist. So sometimes you go through, that's the gateway to get to the stories that you want. Companies often hire former journalists to handle PR. You see that often. If you look at the PR practitioner's credentials, you'll see a career in journalism. And that's because journalists have the writing skills that you need. The basis of good public relations is always going to be writing, no matter what it is. If it's a social media post, all the way to a feature story, all the way to a news release. Journalists also have experience in translating complicated ideas into clear, readable stories. And they also understand what journalists are looking for. So remember, a PR practitioner's first audience is going to be the journalist, who's going to take that news release, take that story idea, and decide whether or not that meets the journalist's goals for informing the public. So let's look at what PR is exactly. So it's planned and continuous communication. It's designed to promote an organization and its image, products or services. It can promote a person. If you are representing a political candidate, for example, or a public speaker or an entertainer, that's going to be, your job is going to be to promote the image of that person. So some of the duties, and I'm telling you, there's so many of them. You'll write news releases, and we'll practice one of those too this week. You create visual communication, so you're going to learn to use different types of programs to create flyers and brochures. You're going to produce video news releases, so you want to know something about video editing and shooting. You're going to do viral campaigns online, and you want to create those rather than try to control one that gets loose from you. You're going to be ahead of all the issues. You're going to be thinking ahead of even the administrators, because your job is to think, your job is to communicate, your job is to understand the public. You're going to monitor all the social media. So you're going to be the one, maybe you post everything, but maybe you've got a staff who post for you. And so you're going to monitor what's on social media about your organization or your image or your idea. You're going to research markets. You're going to decide which media outlets work best for you. So say you have a story that's on the weekend. Well, you're going to know the schedules of the broadcast outlets. Weekends tend to be slow news times. Maybe that's a good time for you to get your story on air because they're looking for something to fill those news holes. Same thing for the print media. You're going to plan and conduct events. So you might have a board meeting with 10 people, or you may have a grand opening with more than 1,000 people. And so you may do both of those in 1 week. In fact, everything on this list you might do all at one time, all in 1 week. So one of the things that I enjoy about public relations is that it's always changing. There's never, ever a dull day. And then when that's over, you always evaluate. You evaluate your campaign, you evaluate your event, you evaluate your social media, and you see, is this doing the job that we wanted to? You're going to poll the public. You're going to learn ways to evaluate your campaign so that you know whether what you've done is a success. So let's look a little bit more about a PR practitioner. Now there are some general broad areas of public relations. And so you can work in corporate, for a company, for a nonprofit. That's a great place to do an internship or even get a start because you get to practice so many of your skills. Or you might work for a government agency. But basically, you're going to communicate with two basic groups. The first is internal publics. Those are your audiences, your officers and employees, those people who are inside of the organization. So if you did public relations writing for LSU, your internal publics would be all those people who function within the gates of LSU. So you can think of students and faculty, staff, administrators. Those are all people that are inside the organization. And you can see how your communication would be different if you were writing something that went toward students, that went toward staff, that went toward faculty, that went toward administrators. So you need to know your different audiences. And then external publics are all those people who are outside of the company, depending on what the organization does. So, for example, LSU, external publics could be fans, they could be alumni, they could be donors to the organization, they can be people who have products that the university uses. It can even be those homes and businesses that operate outside of the gates of LSU. So that's your external publics, and depending on what you need to tell those people will depend on the types of communication that you use. So those are everybody outside, but so as a PR professional, you might handle only internal publics, you may handle only external, or you may do both. So if you have family who work for a large company like Exxon, those companies have PR practitioners who deal just with internal publics, just with employees. So your parents, for example, might have gotten newsletters in the mail directed toward the employees. Those are the internal publics. Those who do external publics might deal with the media, who then again get that message out to the broader public. So let's look at internal communications too. So that you keep the company staff informed. You make sure that the staff feel welcomed. A lot of companies maybe have family picnics and other incentives to help that organization run smoothly and help people to feel like they are valued in the organization. It creates lines of communication between the administrators and the employees because those supervisors think differently than the employees do. And so it's up to the PR practitioner to make sure that the supervisors understand the employees' needs. And then also taking that complicated information that might come from the top to help employees understand different regulations or business practices or policy changes that are occurring. So they keep the employees up to date with any kinds of changes too. And so it also now again takes what goes on inside the company and makes sure that the perception of the company, the internal organization, is perceived well by the media and the general. So external communications, that's going to promote a positive image of the organization. And there's even special categories of public relations called crisis communication, where you're trained to handle a crisis. And usually you know exactly what you're going to do The minute that crisis happens, you are ahead of the game, and that's going to be your job. So it might identify different segments of the public and figures out how to best reach them. So, for example, if you work for a large company, maybe you want to communicate well with the neighborhoods around that complex. So you'll find out what they need. You're going to write news releases, features, different types of writing for the media that the media will receive and then act upon those. You want to, again, always tell the truth. Everything's based on truth. That's an important thing. You're not going to spin things. If there's a crisis, you're going to be honest about what happened. There have been a lot of case studies, and if you continue on in public relations, you'll find out about times where PR practitioners weren't honest about some kind of disaster that happened, and it's never good for the company. You want to be absolutely honest in all your communications. You don't want to spin anything. You want to tell the truth for the sake of your company, for the sake of your reputation, that you are consistent in all that you do. So you're going to do there's so many things that you're going to do, right? Develop press kits. That's information that you would give to someone. In fact, I got one from NASA, and it had information about the landing. It had information about what the astronauts were going to eat. It had information about the different uniforms that they would wear. I can use anything in there to create a story and maybe localize it for my community. I'm going to have an event. That means I have from setup to take down. I'm going to be in charge, or I'm going to delegate those responsibilities. A public service announcement is something that you hear often on the radio, maybe a 10 to 30 second announcement from a nonprofit often, but you would write radio, television, and print types of announcements. You're going to hold meetings. You might film news clips. You'll be in charge of how that meeting runs. You're also going to use your design skills. So as you continue through mass communication, that's going to be a really important piece of your learning experience. You're going to use all of those. In fact, the things that you learn in the manship school, I guarantee you will use every skill as a public relations practitioner. So you want to apply yourself. Keep in mind that your career goal is out there. And so if you want to be a public relations practitioner, these are some of the things that you're going to do. And I guarantee that it's one of the most exciting professions out there because there is never a dull moment and never the same day.